Welcome everyone to Coffee for Scalers. Even though we've left the coffee at home this time and we're actually having a beer in memory of TGIF at Google, we might talk about later if there's any Googlers watching. But I'm delighted to have Jenny Quigley-Jones from Digital Voices, CEO of Digital Voices. Welcome, Jenny.
Thank you for having me. It's so exciting to meet again at this stage of our lives.
Yeah. It's funny. I think the last time, we worked together at Google, and then we caught up recently, and you guys became a Tubular customer, which was awesome. So tell us a little bit about Digital Voices.
Yeah, so at Digital Voices, we are an influence marketing agency, but what we do that's slightly different to a lot of the industry is we specialize in helping brands engage communities and drive global customer acquisition at scale. So a lot of influence marketing agencies are kind of focused on that brand awareness, top of the funnel activation, whereas we have a lot of historic data on campaigns about who actually drives sales as influencers, and we help brands like push the needle on the conversion side.
Oh, cool. And is it purely influencers, your business?
Yeah, we do some. We're actually being because influencers, it's a really competitive market, and people I think now are waking up to the fact that like influencer marketing, you have that bit of influencer content, but actually that can live in so many different places. So we're getting more calls now to put that in, to edit down that influencer content and run it as paid ads, or to feature influence in TV or out of home, or to run social media accounts with influencers. So I think we're going to be diversifying the product range quite a lot this year.
Oh, it sounds like maybe new departments and products and stuff. Yeah.
I know. I was just like getting used to what we were vaguely doing. You know, when you run a company, I don't know, when you run a company, as soon as you get your head around something, it's bound to change. So that's what we've we've been doing this year, last 14 days.
Good. And I think that really resonates with me though, in terms of adverts that are run on YouTube, TikTok and stuff. If they actually are more relevant for that platform, including the influencers and stuff, I've seen anyway higher view-through rates and stuff. So that makes complete sense. I think brands are switching on more.
Yeah, and it's quite funny. I think brands used to have this thing where they wanted to make a really expensive TV ad and put it everywhere. But there's been a lot of like studies that have shown that top high quality production value doesn't actually drive sales. What drives sales is like a strong presenter or a good call to action or a person speaking directly to a camera. And that's all the stuff that an influencer does anyway. So on average, YouTube, like ads that feature influencers are 50% cheaper than working with a video production company and 40% more memorable.
Yeah, heard it here first. New offering from Digital Voices. Yeah, great. I think TikTok as well, though, is like, I guess where TikTok started as a platform where influencers were already massive, like that was kind of what they were all about, versus YouTube back in the day. It was like, what's up there?
Yeah, I think weirdly YouTube kind of went under the radar for a lot of like influence marketing even. So some brands got it like perfectly at Skillshare, Squarespace, you know, like VPNs. We work with a lot of Surfshark VPN. But TikTok, I think there was finally like this sea change in the way advertisers thought about influence marketing, because TikTok spent so much money on educating marketers. So they're like, don't make ads, make TikToks, which is the slogan that they tell everyone,
that's cool,
every single brand to do. We've been saying for like years, like make content videos your customers want to watch, not ads they want to skip. Yeah. And then, so we were saying the YouTube equivalent. And then suddenly when TikTok came out and said it, because they were really pushing brands to be educated, I think the penny dropped. And now so many brands the marketers are approaching influencer differently. I think they're approaching the way they build advertising campaigns differently as well. So it's, thank you, TikTok, you know, as much as a challenge to everything and really difficult in some ways and wonderful in some ways, they've really transformed, I think, the way people think about marketing.
Yeah, that's cool. And with you starting your own business, is it 4 or 5 years ago now?
Yeah, nearly. I don't think the first year, in my head, the first year didn't really count because it was like freelancing for 9 months, and then I'll talk about it later, I guess. And then I switched to hiring people and running campaigns for brands. But yeah, it's coming up. It's 5 at the end of March.
Cool. And for anyone out there, like, actually, I think it's interesting working at Google, because like Google is a hard place to leave, and then to start something up yourself, or as freelance first for like 9 months or whatever it was. Like, how did was that hard to set up a business, or or leave Google, or both, really?
Yeah. Yes. It's interesting because there's this, Google encourages this like entrepreneurial spirit. So they really tell you that like you're working essentially in a big startup, but you're not. You've got like, I think at the time it was like 60,000 employees around the world, but it's much more now. But it felt like there was this romanticization of like entrepreneurship and startups. And then you actually end up in a role where, I don't know how to describe this at Google. They take a lot of very high achieving type A personalities and put them in quite cog in a machine roles, I think sometimes. So you go in with this romanticization of startup culture, of entrepreneurship, of like move fast and break things thinking. And then you get there and your role is actually not quite as exciting and innovative as you thought it would be.
Yeah.
And you're competing with loads of people, and you know, you're collaborating and competing at the same time. I love it as an environment. Like the team were amazing, but I think there's this odd mixture of like competitive and collaboration. But everyone's really smart, everyone's really great, and everyone I think is slightly sometimes disappointed in the cog in the machine type of role. So they're all trying to like make a name for themselves or to innovate in a different direction. So it can be a slightly frustrating place to work, I think, if you really believe in that startup ecosystem. If you really believe in that startup ethos, it can be quite a difficult place to enjoy working. So leaving, everyone's like, oh my God, she was at Google, she was at YouTube, like, we'll pay you to do this training, or why would you ever leave? Like, so it does have a huge benefit and you've learned a lot. But yeah, starting on your own, you suddenly realize like, oh, hang on, why did I romanticize this? This type of entrepreneurship, this type of life? Because it is hard, and you're so pre-programmed to when you work at Google, you message someone and ask for a meeting, they will roll out the red carpet. And like the contrast in like the way you were treated when you work at Google compared to as soon as you leave. Like there are some people who are lovely and still want to talk to you, but there are some people who will not talk to you when you're gone. So you suddenly realize like the power of this big thing behind you was really helpful. So I think, it suits some people.
Did you find that invigorating or not?
No, actually, honestly, I think I found it really frustrating. I think it's taken 5 years. I used to think when I started a business, if you had the best solution, if you rationally had the correct answer, you wouldn't need to sell very hard, and people would just hand over their money, right? They'd be like, actually, great, love your product, love your idea, love what your agency does. The network effect, the names behind you, the partnerships, all that stuff, the relationships you have so much more of an impact. And that is quite frustrating when you come from a place where you genuinely think like, oh, good ideas will succeed. And it's not the good ideas, it's like the amount of effort, the amount you put into it, it's the amount of times you tell and retell your story or edit your proposition, or you're lucky you meet one person at the right time who can introduce you to someone else. So I think I had quite an idealistic view of entrepreneurship, where I thought, oh, if I develop a great solution, it'll grow really fast. And maybe should have prioritized the relationship and understood the importance of big names like Google.
Good. Well, I think actually one question. Well, actually, what was my point of view? Because I was thinking about this as well as you were talking about it. I was thinking I guess I was there about 8.5, 9 years, and I felt kind of frustrated before I left. Just that, like, I don't know, feeling like a bigger impact or something. I agree with you about like the point about competitiveness, but collaborative, and it really fosters like high performance actually from individuals. But maybe you kind of get worn out a bit as well. But I think when I left, I was like, I probably wanted to leave sooner than I'd left. But then when I built up the courage to leave, I was like, oh, I'm loving this, that it's like, this is really hard. I'm like, because it was easier before at Google. So I love the learning. I was like, oh, this is how you do a small business. And it's actually one of my friends who left Google before, and Jeff Nathanson, he was just saying he joined a company called The Whistle, if you know them. And he was just saying to me, I'm sure you won't mind me saying this, but like the highs are high, the lows are low. And that really resonated with me versus like bigger company. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember I went to after I left, there was so everyone kind of wants to leave. Everyone talks about leaving Google and then never actually does it. I think there's like you also want to fit in and like be even more entrepreneurial. Be like, yeah, I've been thinking of doing something else. I've had some great offers.
So many people do that in there. They're like, I have an idea, and they barely want to tell you, but then they'll never do it.
And then you see the moment that their eyes are like, oh no, my equity vests over 4 years. Oh my God, that means so much more in 2 years than taking a risk on a startup. And so there'll always be like a reason to stay. And I think that's what gets people. I had to say to myself, I was like, right, Jenny, you know you want to do something else. Genuinely, I was like, once you have a certain save, it was okay. I look back on this now and I'm like, I was such an idiot. I was like, once you have 10 grand in savings, you can quit. And you have to hand in your notice that month. In my head, I still don't own a flat. I thought 10 grand in savings was like great. Like looking at it now, I know I'm lucky my business could start on £500, but like that actually is not a big safety net, especially in London. Like it's not. So I told myself once I had that amount of money, I had to go. But a lot of people never set that goal for themselves, or there's always a reason to stay. There's always the next perf cycle. There's always like more stock that vests. There's always a lot of very good reasons to stay, I think.
Yeah. And actually I interviewed Rob Gable yesterday, the CEO or the ex-CEO and founder of Tubular. And I was asking him actually about like founding Tubular, and he did that kind of maybe after doing maybe 15 or 20 years kind of in a career, and then he kind of jumped and did it. And I think what you said there, like I think there's probably two types kind of founders, where it's like where you're younger in your career and you kind of don't know any better, or like to take that plunge, and you're less fear, like you've less to risk, I guess, as well. Like you mightn't have a family at that stage, or so on and so forth, or your expectations of like how much you need to put away and stuff are less, and you're maybe more confident at like being younger and stuff as well. But so I think it's interesting.
Statistically, your business is far more likely to fail. Like so we have this like romanticized view. I mean, I think there are lots of Silicon Valley romanticized views, but we have this romanticized view of like the Mark Zuckerberg effect of entrepreneurship. So we think great entrepreneurs are in their 20s, but actually statistically, the businesses that are most likely to succeed are founded by people in their 40s and 50s, because you actually know an area of business before you innovate. Whereas people who jump in without much career experience, you haven't learned different systems, you haven't learned how to run a company, you haven't learned how, for me, like there weren't that many people who had expertise in the YouTube creator economy. So there was a differentiator that I'd at least learned about, that I could found a company linked to. But if I hadn't worked at Google and just started a company from scratch, it would have failed like very, very quickly. So I think there's this excitement around being an entrepreneur in your 20s and stereotype about it, but it is not the wisest thing to do. And most people, I think, if you don't need to be an entrepreneur, go and get experience somewhere else and then found your business later once you know more you want to do.
Great advice. Yeah. And did you always want to be an entrepreneur?
No. I love systems. No. Yeah. I thought I'd be an academic or a journalist.
Oh wow. Yeah. What did you do in university?
History and politics. And then I did I got a scholarship to do my master's at Harvard in Middle Eastern Studies. So I specialized in the Syria crisis for like 4 years. And then applied for, I read an article that said that
there's a thing called Google.
Genuinely. So I read an article in The Economist that said, if you're young and you want your career to grow quickly, so that you have expertise that you can then apply to the international development field later. If you're like standard, like if you got 2 1s, if you're like good at sport, if you're good at networking, go to consultancy. if you're quirky, go to tech. And it was this article in The Economist, and I read it when I was like 24, and I was like, great, I'll apply for tech then.
Yeah.
Google, but I had no plans of being an entrepreneur at all.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So the other thing I was going to say, it was quite funny. I went to a Zoogler event. You know?
Oh yeah. I've never gone to one, but when I left Google, I got into the group and stuff, and it looks like those guys do a great job of like organizing that whole thing and stuff. Maybe it's more of a business now. I don't know, but yeah, tell us what's
an investment fund linked to it for startups. Yeah, we found, I think, one of our investors through it. Yeah, it's really. It's a group of good people. But I remember quite soon after I left, we had an event at Stripe, and I was so excited because Stripe, exceptional company.
Yeah.
And the person
Irish company.
The person speaking said, "Oh, put your hand up if you miss Google." And like 80% of the room put their hand up, and I was
wow. Did they? Wow.
And I was sat there like, wow, this is like, I don't want to romanticize the experience I had. Like, I loved the team. Like, I learned a lot. But once I left, I wasn't desperate to go back. Yeah.
I guess that question though, do you miss it or do you regret leaving, is a different question. Was that question like, do you miss it?
Yeah, miss it. It wasn't regret leaving.
Yeah. That would have been a pretty direct question at this like fun Googler event. Yeah.
If you're having an existential crisis.
You regret ever leaving the place and you wish you never did, and your life.
How much you miss the avocado toast? Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah. The food was good. I love the people, and I do miss it, but I don't leave. I don't regret leaving. But anyway, different question.
It is weird, isn't it? It's I think like it gives you a really strong grounding in knowing.
Yeah.
For me, like the powerful things about Google. So focus on learning, which I thought was really great, and would want to take into any company culture. The focus on innovation, the focus on bringing, like the idea of bringing your whole self to work, which I don't think you can ever always have, but the idea that like someone does their best work when all their needs are met and when they're in a supportive, empowering culture that tells them to go for things that, like, if someone's worried about paying their bills, they will not do the best work for you because they'll be stressed all the time.
Yeah.
So a lot of those principles are something I've tried to take to a startup, a scale up. Now I run an agency. So like all the examples were brilliant. It just, I think sometimes when a company gets big, you can't foster the innovation that is like the PR promise.
Yeah. When it's that big. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And so with digital voices, I'd love to touch on this again. Like I guess, what have you brought from the Google days, or what did you kind of change differently that you didn't really think that you thought could be good for your culture and digital voices? But before you answer that, what scale is digital voices for people to understand?
Yeah. So our revenue is going to be about 10 million US this year. There's about 32 on the team, and we're hiring another. I think we have like 8 or 10 open roles at the moment.
Apply below. I'll put the link below.
Yeah, please do. I mean, we're looking for some really senior roles and some more junior ones. We're hiring a CTO at the moment. We're hiring a client services director globally, and the jobs are US or UK. So we've just a couple of weeks ago incorporated in the US, and so I'm going to be opening our office there from April. But yeah, it's a very fast growing team. It's been since like the outbreak of the pandemic, we've grown by like over 800% in terms of revenue, which is mad.
Whoa.
So the pandemic for this, the pandemic was an interesting time for influence marketing, and then also for changing the way that I led the team. One
question I had for you actually was with do you use OKRs like for this accountability piece?
And I feel so. It's one of the things I didn't think I'd take from Google, to be honest. OKRs.
You didn't like them there. Yeah.
We've also now, as of September, we've now got twice a year promotion cycles as well.
Oh, great.
It's not perf, because perf is too problematic.
But is there a 360 feedback kind of thing, or no?
Yeah, there is start, stop, continue from people. Yeah, but yeah, so we have OKRs. We've tried to set them, we've tried to edit them a little bit so your objective is a much bigger objective, and you have like KPIs that you should do your job as a basis, and then the objectives you set are bigger, like beyond your job. What would you like to do? Because I think the OKRs got quite mundane when I was at Google. It was like the first one was like essentially do your job, hit your target. And then there may be one that was like learning, whereas we've tried to make them a bit more ambitious in terms of way.
Like I worked at Google. Obviously, everyone did it. I agree with you as well that like the level of taking them serious or not, or there wasn't a good like benchmark of like what you're meant to do with them. I think there was a good benchmark of like they need to be a 20% stretch, but then I don't know, it was manager by manager really. And then at Tubular we used to do them, and actually implemented them really well. And then at Precise TV where I now work, we didn't have anything like that, and I've introduced them, and I think they're excellent to drive
the Google
like
person who's brought them into the culture.
Yeah, I sent to my team, if they listen to this, I sent them like I sent them a short video from YouTube about OKRs and then a long video, and it was like I actually listened to it was an hour long of this engineer talking about OKRs. It was a brilliant video. It was brilliant.
One of my team, it was quite funny because we were talking about OKRs and I'd set them and I'd like explain what they were. And one of my team went off and found the hour video and watched it and was like, Jimmy, I think OKRs can do more. And I was like, oh my God, you watched an hour video on OKRs?
Yeah.
You know what? It makes them better. Yeah. It's interesting. I think like it forces you to check in with someone structurally, and it forces you to get them to set their own goals. And I think that creates like more of a entrepreneurial or an intrapreneurship mindset. So you're right. When they're not there, suddenly there's this hole, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's good cadence and accountability. Yeah.
You know, when you can tell the startups that were founded by Zooglers, because you talk to people and they're like, oh, do you have OKRs? And if like Booking.com has OKRs, and I was like, was that
funny.
A Zoogler? And it's like,
yeah, that's funny.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you. What was I going to ask you? I was going to say to you actually about God, it's interesting about Steve Bartlett writing on Dragon's Den. We were talking about this earlier, but and like actually with Steve Bartlett, I'm like, wow, like the founders of Lab Bible, Jungle Creation, Social Chain, they all knew each other up north and stuff. There's an amazing amount of young entrepreneurs in the UK, isn't there? Like in this digital media influencer space, which you are one of them. But yeah, what's your thoughts on that? Do you know all of these guys as well, or people? Sorry, guys and girls.
Jamie from Jungle, I think, is lovely. It's quite funny. One of the founders of Goat, Harry, who actually we've met and stuff, and I think that's like what's quite nice. There's like a younger entrepreneurship where instead of it necessarily, some people are really competitive, but I think a lot of younger entrepreneurs try to fight having a scarcity mindset. And I remember I was chatting to Harry and he said, I'm so excited about with this industry is we're going to make so many young entrepreneurial millionaires. And I wasn't thinking about the millionaire. To me, it's not the millionaires that we make that makes a difference. Like that scale isn't that exciting to me. But what does excite me is that like this year, Digital Voices paid out like over £5 million to creators. Those creators are micro entrepreneurs themselves. So we might not be making them millionaires, but we're letting them hire an editor who will probably be a young creative freelancer.
Yeah.
We're like, there's someone who we were working with who's building like a whole team in Galway. And he was like, I really want Galway to do well. I want to hire local people in Galway. And I was like, anytime we can pay you, I feel really happy because we're helping you as an entrepreneur create like a small business.
Galway in Ireland.
Galway in Ireland, yeah.
Real
Engineering, yeah. He runs a channel called Real Engineering. And then there's another channel we worked with that travel around the world, and they said, oh, by the way, we're currently in Panama and we're funding this we're investing in this indigenous community. So we're fighting like loggers and we're trying to create these local businesses. And they were like, all the money that you pay through Surfshark goes to these communities. And you're like, oh wow, that's like amazing tangible impact. So there's a network of like the entrepreneurs at the top, but I think beyond that there's like a huge creator economy surge that you're supporting. Some of them will make more money than, you know, me or the founders of any other agency ever will.
Maybe you should have do you have a think with Digital Voices that these stories should go on?
No, we should actually. It's quite we're gonna
great stories.
It's mad, isn't it? It's like, yeah, you think about it, and it's funny that influencers are so kind of demonized as a career choice in the UK, especially. I think a lot of people think it's I did a session with some designers recently, and I asked them honestly before the session, like, what do you think of influencer marketing? And they were like, influencers are narcissistic, a necessary evil, self-indulgent, performative. I was just like, I mean, there were some good things somewhere in there. I mean, at least they were a necessary evil. But in the UK, the perception, everyone says, oh, did you see that study that people want to be YouTubers more than astronauts? Isn't that sad? Whereas in a lot of countries, like in Indonesia, they've talked about how governments talk about how it's great that people are becoming creators because they're creating wealth in the economy. So I think there's like a weird separation in people's minds. They don't see that influencers are entrepreneurs.
Which is really like creative people, and the creative industry is booming in this influencer space, which like, I think if people were like, okay, just crazy out there, but like artists, poets are doing really well in general. Like, well, I don't know if you can compare them to artists and poets, but well, you can. They're creative.
I mean, and it's quite funny. Like in the UK at the moment, getting any video production done is really, really difficult. So like Amazon and Netflix having a great time, and they have Amazon, Netflix, a little bit Disney have bought up like lots of the freelance video or production agencies' time, because they're trying to commission so much content, and there's a battle to commission content.
I did not know that.
We were really there was a project we were working on that was for a really big name client, and we were actually really struggling to find a video production company that could do it, because they all kept winning these huge contracts. Like I know people in London who are being offered to fly out and move to LA to edit, because the editing skill is so scarce now. But we really respect people who are video editors. If you said to someone, that you said, what's your job? And they went, I'm editing this show for Netflix. You'd be like, wow, that's so cool. But when it's, I'm running a social media channel, like I run a YouTube channel, people are like, oh, another influencer.
Everyone stop giving bad rep to all these amazing people doing all this work. But I think like the video edit,
lots of them are like incredible creative people.
And like a lot of the actual, I keep using the word influencers, creators, let's just say creators, they actually do a lot of editing themselves usually at the start, and then maybe bring on an editor and stuff. Cool.
And there are lots of creators who still edit themselves even at like millions of subscribers. They're like, that's the one thing I can't risk giving away. So fascinating.
What age were you when you founded Digital Voices?
I was 26, so I left Google and freelanced for 9 months. So I was 26 and 27 when it started doing well. I'd say like the company at 29 started doing like much better. It's pandemic time, and now I'm 31, and I do sometimes feel the need to like confess that. It's quite funny. It's like I have to be like, sorry, by the way, I'm 31, because I do get it's happened in front of clients as well. It happened once in a chemistry session where
session. What's a chemistry?
Okay, so when two agencies are going to have to work on a project together, often you have a session. It used to be in person, obviously now it's normally virtual, where the client will come and the two agencies will come, and you will discuss your strategy together and how your campaigns will work together. So if you're relatively smart, you realize you're in front of the client, and what you do in that session is get on, right? Find a way for your strategies to work. We got to this session, and it was the client, and luckily the client was two women, which was great. And their agency, it was 3 guys who were very much a fan of traditional media. So they wanted to take all our budget and put it on TV, whereas the client was like, no, we want to do YouTube marketing. Yeah. I had a younger male employee with me who got treated with utmost respect by this client. They listened to every time.
They didn't know your titles or anything at the time, was it?
Oh, they knew.
Oh, right.
Wow. Just, yeah. The guy said to me, one of the guys said, do you know anything about YouTube in the meeting? And I said, well, I think I'm the only one here who's worked there. So yeah. And he went, oh God. And then he said,
why did he say, oh God? He felt bad.
Because I think he realized he was backed into a corner. And then he said, oh, do you even understand
basic response, by the way.
Thanks. Yeah. Then he said, do you even understand basic psychology to me in the meeting in front of the client? And at that point, I was like, there's nothing I can do here. So the client jumped in and defended our strategy and the strategy they'd chosen. And then afterwards, they took me outside and said, don't worry, we will pay for you never to have to work with them again. Like,
wow.
But yeah, that was literally in a chemistry session where the ideal outcome is get on with each other.
Yeah.
But I sat there and I watched my younger male employee, who was wonderful, but I watched him have every single thing he said completely respected. And every single thing I said got like ripped apart in the most demeaning way.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, brilliant. Great.
Do you think it's getting better, this whole gender issues? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think partly Me Too helped, also partly things on Zoom. It's much harder to harass. Like also a lot of the networking that was done over golf, it was harder to do during the pandemic.
Yeah. Melissa from Jungle was on this as well, and we talked about this subject, and she was saying about golf days as well. And then she was saying about like having spa days, or well, not to be totally gender another way, but actually, yeah, the golf stuff. Is the golf stuff still big? Yeah, in the agency world.
Huge.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a female investor who recommended I play golf. Yeah, and then Jamie plays golf in Jungle. Harry plays golf. Yeah, a lot. There's definitely a golf culture.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Yeah. No, I didn't think it was a thing until I became an entrepreneur. Like at Google, no one played golf.
Yeah, no one. No, actually, I went to the golf day one day at Google, but it was men and women went, and I think anyway. But but it was just more of a fun thing than like a business thing. Like even though you say that, I guess you say that, but that's the problem, isn't it? That like it's maybe it's a fun thing, but then serious conversations happen there, and if people aren't in the room or the bloody fairway, that's the problem. Yeah.
But that's the thing. I think like people trust people. Yeah. And if you see someone and you spend time with them, you trust them more. So it's like, how do you cross over your social settings enough?
Yeah.
Golf days at Google, it was not like, if it wasn't like essential to go on golf days. Do you know what I mean? Like it was quite funny. It was like nearly ironic because it was like, we work in tech. Why would we golf?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so far out. It's so far outside of London. Do we really have to go? Yeah.
You network over drinks at Google, like go to like a bad karaoke bar, but you wouldn't end up like normally.
Yeah. Do you like with culture, like do you consciously go about making sure that you have a good culture? And if so, how?
Yes, it's very, very conscious. So a few things. So I think the number one thing that stresses people out in their life is money. So if they are, and this came from the Netflix book, actually, it was really interesting. The book says if someone is not doing just a job that is like automated, a job that could be done over and over again, if they're doing anything that creatively could have an impact on your business, you need to pay them the top you can to make sure you have the top performers. So we actually say to the staff, if you get approached for another job that's in a similar field, can you take the interview and can you also tell us how much they'd pay you as a salary? Because it helps us to know that we're in line with the market, or we're near the top of the market.
Yeah.
So I think money, if people stress about money, that impacts everything they do. So pay people fairly.
Yeah.
That's, we've got like a profit sharing bonus as well. So if the company hits their targets, everyone gets a bonus, which is really nice to be able to do.
That's cool. Yeah.
but it's also like, here's how you can help us get there. So it fosters this culture of responsibility. We have an open like finance questions on Slack channel, and we put spreadsheets in there tracking our progress to those targets, which obviously are very confidential. But we say to people, look, if you have any questions about reading a P&L, our CFO will just get back to you, like put them on the Slack. We really want that culture of openness and where people...
Transparency, yeah.
And where financially feel stable. And then beyond that, there's a lot of little extra culture bits you can do. So we know everyone's really collaborative. So when we've offered to do things like, let's do a leaderboard, and like the person who signs up most creators gets a bonus or something, the team have actively said, no, that's not the culture we want. We want to all be rewarded or not at all, because we're all helping each other.
Team, yeah.
And it's really, so we do like around, if you're having a hard day, so Blue Monday's coming up on Monday. Where no one's working before 11 a.m. We've given everyone the morning off. With our people and culture manager is sending everyone like a little plant. Because we're like, it's okay. You know what comes first is like your mental health. If things are really hard and it's a beautiful sunny day, I'll be like, guys, can we give everyone the afternoon off? But little things like that make a huge difference. And when I've given people random afternoons or days off, they will go and meet up with each other. It's actually, like, it's very supportive, very much like everyone will help you get to where you want to be. And that's like and then you have to reassert that all the time. So if learning's foundational, I have to be like, hey, everyone, have you done learning? Hey, I read this book. Hey, I saw this thing. Here are some podcasts that might help you. When someone gives me critical feedback, even if it's like the most junior person on the team, I will purposefully call that out in a team meeting and be like, just want to say this week, thank you to Laurie for giving me this feedback. Like, I agree, I should be more focused in the way I ask team questions. And so everyone knows there's no hierarchy. Because it's like encouraging the behavior you want to see.
Sorry, go ahead.
It is hard. The hard part of it is if someone doesn't fit into the culture. Then, so we've had just a very few instances, but we hired someone quite senior who just, I don't think fitted into the culture, and we had to let them go. Technically, they could have done their job, but
they weren't a good culture fit.
They weren't a good culture fit, and they were about to hire a team under them. So, like, we were about to create a subculture that wouldn't have matched. So it's sad.
Do you think with that though, like making sure that you hire a very well, obviously diverse teams, but diverse-minded or diverse people in terms of attitude and stuff, does that grate against that if you're kind of culturally trying to hire people who are similar-minded?
It's a big worry that I have, and it's hard. I don't think we've hired people who are similar. I think we've hired diverse mentalities and people from a lot of different cultures. But you know what we're really lacking sometimes is like a more laddie culture. So I don't know what we want to hire for. So
laddie culture. It's the first time we've heard that in this podcast. We want to hear a laddie culture.
We don't have a laddie culture. That's such, I can't imagine any of our, like there's like, I'm very strict on like, if there's sexual harassment, you will go. Do you understand? And it's quite funny. Our team, like, I can't imagine that happening here because we really don't have that like hyper macho. And I do think oddly, we probably lose out in terms of sales because of it.
Yeah, well, actually, one thing I thought when you were talking through all of this earlier, you know, where you said about like everyone working together, like the team said they don't like a leaderboard because they like to be rewarded as a group. Like from what I found from like hiring salespeople or customer success people like account management and ad operations and stuff really like to be rewarded as like groups. But then the salespeople, they're more individualistic. So it's interesting.
We combine for the salespeople, we combine individual and team targets. Because you want everyone to know they'll get rewarded when they help each other get to their goals.
So
you put a lot of structure into, it's like the way Google had the peer bonus structure. I really like that. I mean, it helped you like as much as I think it could have been used more, it reminded you that you had to think about.
Yeah, that was cool. So anyone could randomly say to anyone, this person helped me, and it was £100 or dollars or something.
And we do like a shout out every week. We have like a Thursday call where we talk about like what went well in the week, and we like celebrate each other and give people shout outs in front of the whole company.
Cool.
Or, like, went badly. So it's quite we do try and create that like reinforcing culture.
Yeah.
I think if people are happy, they work hard. So this isn't so.
For sure.
I'm having this debate about target culture, so targets and commission, right?
Yeah.
So in the Netflix book, it says if someone's great, ask the best employees you know, go around, find them and ask them, and say, you always work really, really hard. Did a bonus ever make you work harder? Did you ever work harder because of a bonus?
Yeah.
And most of the top performers say no. They say, I would have done the same job either way.
Well, I've hired a lot of salespeople, right? And I often ask the question. Actually, I plan to ask you in a minute in an interview, like, what motivates you? Yeah. And some people, like particularly British people, right? They don't want to ever say money. Like Irish people as well. Irish British people are the same. But but then like you meet some salespeople and they say money or bonuses. And I think of all the people I've interviewed, I think maybe in sales, I would say 30% of people said money, but I think it's more like 50% would have said it if they didn't feel like shy about it or whatever. But I actually think that's a good thing. Sometimes, like, because a lot of salespeople are motivated that way. But
yeah.
I
don't know if it's like, it's funny. I don't know if you set them a target, but they got the same income either way. I don't know. We try to make sure that no one is paid at the stage where they'd worry. Does that make sense? No one would be.
Yeah.
But for some salespeople, you get recommended like put them on like nothing, and it's 100% commission. And if they don't sell, they don't eat. You're like, oh, that mentality doesn't seem like it would bring the best out in people.
I know. I don't think you'll get the best talent these days with that either, particularly in our space. Yeah. I think there was a company in the US where the guy he was the founder and he
speaks about it, right? Go on.
Yeah. I forget the guy's name and everything. Talk about it. Yeah, it's fascinating. What was it again?
I think he lived on his lowest employee's salary for a year and then decided to raise all minimum salaries in the company to like $70,000 a year.
That was it. Yeah, it's fascinating. I agree with you. People who are happy, I think from everything you've said, I think it sounds like you guys have an awesome culture. And I think the transparency piece and that profit share thing, I haven't heard too many companies talk about. That's cool. Yeah.
I think not that many startups do it. I think it's like some established companies do. I think startup, it requires having a financial planning expert, and most like
we don't even have HR, not to mind finance. Yeah. With what's happening next with digital voices and the future of influencer marketing in general, what do you think is what's exciting?
Yeah, it's quite a lot exciting. I think 2022. I mean, everyone's saying this, so maybe it's optimistic in January, but I think it's going to be quite a big year. So I'm going to be opening our US office. I'm also waiting for my Irish passport to come through so I can finally open the Amsterdam office as well. So I think we're going to have a very big year. So I'll be heading to the US a lot and moving some of the team out there. And actually, there are quite a few UK agencies opening in the US in 2022. It turns out the influencer industry in the US, I think, is very platform driven and very PR driven, but it's not so much like influencer specialist agencies. So I think there's a lot of kind of learning to do, which I didn't know until we were competing directly against US agencies and winning. I was like, oh, okay, there's an opportunity here. But I think in 2022, it's going to be a fascinating space in terms of the scale of influencer spend is I think still going to keep increasing because influencer fees are going up. So ironically, brands are going to want to get more for their money, which means featuring that influencer content in paid ads out of home, using influencers at events if we can. Like I think there's going to be far more influence marketing across different media plans. And then I think it's going to be a really creative time. And I don't know if the creativity in 2022, if I'm being honest, I don't know if a lot of the creative things like NFTs and the metaverse with creators are going to drive the bottom line. I think like there are lots of companies that will jump on the more exciting creative side, but I think they'll spend on it once and maybe not include it in their always on strategies. I think like NFTs and is probably going to become the sexy thing for a brand to do in 2022, NFTs and TikTok, but isn't necessarily driving their sales. So I don't know if they're going to be included in 2023 in a consistent way. So it's going to be an exciting time there. I think we're going to see a lot of change and brands trying to do something different. And there's a huge space to innovate. So I'm excited for that Web3.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's been absolutely amazing to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me, and looking forward to our next beer, maybe in person sometime in 2022. Yeah.
In Victoria Park.
In Victoria Park. Yeah.